Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, distinguished panelists and the participants who have joined us from all across the globe. My name is Janat Ahmed, and I welcome you all to this panel discussion, vital panel discussion, where we have come together just not to observe the separate commemorations, but to, weave together the interconnected threads of peace, social justice, and human dignity, the themes that lie at the very heart of multiple United Nations International Days and Sustainable Developmental Goals. So before we begin, let me, share why Women Ascension is uniquely positioned to, host this dialogue. As most of you know, that Women Ascension is a global nonprofit organization dedicated to providing a platform for individuals to practice their skills, develop leadership qualities and achieve self-sustainability. So while our name honors the journey of women's empowerment, our mission extends beyond gender. We are committed to equipping all individuals with tools to sustain themselves and uplift their communities as well. So at our core, we champion, a diversity, inclusivity, tolerance, and pluralism, values we recognize as non-negotiable foundations for genuine progress, remaining steadfastly committed to United Nations Sustainable Developmental Goals. So the challenges we face today, from armed conflict and systematic inequality to the erosion of the trust in our institutions, demands that we move beyond siloed um, thinking. We cannot, build peaceful societies while ignoring injustice. We cannot champion human rights while communities lack mechanism to hold power accountable. And we cannot achieve lasting change without recognizing that these struggles are deeply interconnected. And that is precisely why Women Ascension creates a space for these essential conversations. By amplifying diverse voices and connecting global principles to community level action, we demonstrate that meaningful change begins when we listen, learn, and commit to shared responsibility. And today's panel brings together four exceptional voices who approach these themes from different vantage points, yet share the common commitment to justice, dignity, and peace. We are truly honored to welcome Ms. Anna, Ms. Petrina, Ms. Desdemona, and Mr. Andrew today. Each of them will share insights from their unique expertise and lived experience, helping us understand not just what of the building peaceful and just societies, but of the how, that how the practical mechanisms, the community level interventions, and the everyday systems that either uphold or undermine human dignity. So to begin our panel today, I am honored to introduce our first speaker, who is Ms. Anna Lalu Petishenko. Ms. Anna is a dedicated educator and advocate for displaced communities. She's originally from Ukraine and she's now residing in Greece. She has spent over 3 years supporting Ukrainian refugees, teaching Greek, guiding families through state institutions, and helping them rebuild their lives with dignity and resilience. And as both a mother and a patriot, her work empowers displaced families to feel safe, informed, and confident in unfamiliar environments. Today, in alignment with the International Day of Peaceful Coexistence observed on 28th January, Ms. Anna will address a critical question for our divided world, that how do we build peaceful coexistence in practice and not just in principle? She will explore what peaceful coexistent coexistence truly means at community level, that how neighbors with different languages, cultures, and experiences learn to live together with mutual respect. Drawing from her, frontline work with refugee integration, Ms. Anna will discuss the everyday actions, dialogue practices, and the institutional approaches that transform suspicion into solidarity and the difference into shared strength. She'll help us understand how nonviolence, active listening, and inclusive community practice create the foundations for lasting peace not just between the nations, but within our neighborhoods, schools, and families. So, without further ado, Miss Anna, the floor is all yours, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you very much for welcoming me here with your warm description. And of course, thank you very much, Women Ascension, as an organization, for being here for us, for everyone who is trying to make this world a better place and to create these discussions where we can once again discuss and look for solutions which could be applied practically in every community to make this world a little bit more peaceful, people more friendly, and to bring peaceful life closer, especially during these times where we see wars everywhere and so many people uh, need to move, need to leave their homes, need to go somewhere else, and it's super important point for discussion at this point. So, as you said, on 28th of January, it's International Day of Peaceful Coexistence, and this is very important day actually because everyone, independently of the nation, color, language, wants the same thing. We want to live in peaceful place, be healthy, have our kids going to school, have dreams for better future and better tomorrow. So peaceful coexistence is very important thing. And practically, in order to see how we can have this coexistence, we need to understand, who we need to include in understanding of this topic. And usually, people who need to be included and engaged in this, it's people who had to leave their homes because of the war, because of the violence, maybe disasters, poverty, different reasons, but the same result. People moved, they left their homes and they came to a new place. Or very often they go to a different country with a different language, different culture, maybe different religion, and everything around is absolutely unfamiliar. It's unfamiliar and they are already exhausted, they are in fear. And when they arrive to a new place, the local people also are afraid of these people who come. So this is another problem which we face here, because community which will welcome these people at the first level, they are unsure, how they will behave and what to do with these people. So this is a big problem which every nation faces when they see people from other country come to their land. So practically, it's not just an idea, it's a daily practice which many countries face now. Me, as talking about Ukrainians, we have 8 million people who moved to different countries around the world, and they met absolutely new conditions in every country they arrive. Greece is a place which is in the center of the Europe, and we have sea around us. So we have a lot of people from Asia coming to us with boats from different countries. And here we welcome people from many countries. And this is something we face on a daily basis. So we need to understand how to live peacefully and coexist with these people who come to this country. And this is a big discussion for Greece and every one of us. So we need to understand what is peaceful coexistence practically means. It means that we live with people who come from other place without violence. We respect them, and even if they are very different from us, we need to talk to these people, to welcome them, and to understand, what's going on. We need to recognize that these people are exactly as us. They well educated, they have different backgrounds, they could be very respectful in their countries, and now they were forced to leave. And we need to understand, what is their background, what are their beliefs, what are their experiences. So we need to see how we can live peacefully with them, because we see these people on a daily basis. We share with them the same streets, our kids go to the same schools, we go to the same workplace, and these people like us, they have the same dreams in their life. So we need to understand that people who come from other place will not become as we are. We don't need to change them. We need to understand them better, to listen to them, to learn how to communicate with these people, and always to do this with dignity. So when we talk about how we can have a peaceful coexistence, we actually think about three main pillars. One is non-violence, in any case. Second is a dialogue, when we discuss with them and understand them what's going on in their life and what experiences they had before they come to us. And then it's everyday actions which help to build peace in our country and how we can peacefully live with these people in this land. So when we talk about non-violence, so first of all, what comes to the mind, we have the violence like physical one. But practically, violence is not the physical harm only, it's also psychological harm. We can avoid physical harm to people, but we need also to remember that our voice, our words, our actions, the way we look at people, everything can be read. And people see how we talk to them, how we behave, if we respect them or not, how do we react to what they do. So it's very important to start from each of us and be respectful and remember that non-violence is the first step to any communication, independently if it's refugees or it's people who are just around us. Refugees and displaced people are even more vulnerable category because they left areas with violence and they are afraid, they could feel not safe, they escaped conflict, and if they come to a new place, they definitely don't need fear and rejection. So for us, it's not only avoiding, physical harm to these people. It's engaging them in our life. It's embracing these people in the daily actions and getting friends with these people, letting them feel that they are welcomed here. So what we could practically do on a family level, which is like first step in our communication everywhere. We need to teach our kids empathy. We need to explain to them that we cannot bully others. That teaching other people because they speak with accent, because they don't speak properly, because they have different color, because they wear different clothes, because of their religion, it's not acceptable. Everyone is equal, independently of the differences which we have, obviously. On a community level, we need to consider the speech, first of all. No hate speech is allowed. We need to stay for the people who are next to us. In case we see that somebody speaks improperly to them, we need to be on their side. We need to protect them. So, in every community place where we interact with such people, in schools, in parks, in supermarkets, in public events, in holiday places, we need to treat these people with respect. And institutional level is definitely the place where we need to protect non-violence policies. And we need to involve refugees, immigrants into decision making. We need to involve them in the discussions. And here, non-profits do a lot of work practically because they speak to government, they show their work, how they support, what they do. They interact very much with institutions. So this is a very big issue where non-profits can do plenty of work. And non-violence is not weakness. Action is actually a courage. And if we, each of us, will do some steps towards making our cities, our schools, our parks more safe place for everyone, it will be the best thing for everyone. The second thing is the dialogue. Dialogue is a very important thing because nowadays majority of people just listen and they just listen to give the answer, the way they think about the things. And we need to learn to listen deeply. And we need to learn to listen to understand and to listen before we judge because majority of people who come from other countries often had their big stories behind. They were teachers, they were entrepreneurs, they were maybe at high level positions. They had perfect life, and someday they needed just to leave to other place and start it from zero. So if we don't know the stories of these people and if we don't understand their situations, it's very difficult to know, what's going on in their life and how they react to something and if they understand what's going on in our country or not. So talking as a dialogue is very, very important thing. Often for us, refugees, it's numbers. We like say, we have 3,000 children and 5,000 parents who came to our country and we need to do this, permissions to live and permissions to work. But practically, it's not the numbers, it's people. It's everyday life. It's people who go in your neighborhood, who talk to your children, who have the same dreams with you. So we need to talk and to engage with these people as much as possible so we make them feel better in any place where they are. So what do we do here practically? The dialogue means we have to encourage our kids to interact with such children from other countries, from other cultures. The families need to talk about cultures. We can invite them with their parents or just the kids who can play together, who can go out together, who can spend some time. And it will be the best thing to learn traditions of other people, to see the story, to see, what they have done in past. And it will make our life more colorful, more interesting. On a community level, of course, we need to engage these people in anything what we do around. In cultural exchanges, in sport events, in celebrations, we need to respect the celebrations they can organize for themselves, for their community. And for example, in school of my kids, they did an international cuisine day. So they asked parents from each class, any person who was non-Greek, to prepare a traditional dish from their country. And they decided between the classes who will do the main dishes, who would do salads, who would do sweets, and so on. And we created like a big, big table because we saw that we are a very, very international school, and we had like more than 50 mothers who prepared different dishes. It was absolutely amazing. Everybody was happy, kids were happy, and everyone who was from a different country could feel, a little more included and little more engaged and like I am, the same as you. And it was really big celebration and it helped much this school community to become closer and kinder to each other. And this is one very easy thing that everybody could do. On the institution levels, of course, we need to talk to decision making to see people who can do, different laws and things could support children, especially in schools. For example, with extra language lessons, with some extra curriculum activities, with some program for refugees where they can, for example, update their skills so they can easier find a job if they are allowed to stay in the countries. So the dialogue need to go on all the time. And the better we have this dialogue, the best result we will have at the end of the day. The third pillar is everyday action, which will build peace. We need to understand that we are people, we are humans, and we interact all the time. So we definitely need to interact with people who come from other countries in all the ways. At home, we need to talk to our kids to teach them kindness, to teach them understanding, to teach them dialogue, to uh, explain them how to embrace these people from other countries, these people from other cultures, maybe to read a little bit more about their culture so we can understand, or to read a little bit more about their religions that we can understand. We can volunteer to make some support language classes. This is what I do practically to Ukrainians and Greeks in Greece. We can do some little holidays, or some activities which would be for neighborhood, for community, if in your country you have such thing. Or school could be the place where you could make some active things for kids from all the countries. And practically, kids are the easiest thing. They go together with any nation, with any age. They just, if you let them go with others, they will find the way to talk, they will find the way to place, they will do everything by themselves very fast. Parents are the one who make and create the problems. The institutions, of course, state, especially institutions, its classes and classrooms, um, which need to consider the differences. And this is some very important questions which are raised because now I see, for example, in Europe, we see like Italy, who say that they will not allow some clothing at schools or in some public places, and we need to stay here alerted and to see that everyone are respected and everyone who come from other place has these freedoms which are offered by constitutions of every country, and we need to be alerted for any kind of injustice which come, from the governments. So we stop it immediately if we see it, because this will destroy the peaceful coexistence between us. And social cohesion. Uh, our communities will be living together and getting stronger together only when we come all together and we do things that allow everyone to contribute. We can include people who come from other countries into whatever the community does. We can hire these people, we can create some extra courses, for example, for teaching children their language. Not only people who came to our country to learn our language. They can open as entrepreneurs their companies. If they are artists, they could be engaged in some art products. They could do a lot of things, and some of them are really very active one. I see it with examples of Ukrainians. They open a lot of companies. They do festivals. They produce stuff. They do art exhibitions. They bring artists from Ukraine here with concerts. They are very active. So they are not just the refugees, poor thing. They are people. They are equal. They are with dignity. So we need to treat them the same way as we treat ourselves and engage them and support them and help them to do, if they have the will to do something, to let them do it and to support them in any possible way. And when people will feel equal, they will make the community even stronger and more engaged. And this will bring to peaceful situation in everywhere, in every little town, in every city, in the country in general. So practically, when we work with displaced people for any reason, and I see here, especially when I work with nonprofits who help a lot in different things, that we really have resilience and hope, because nonprofits support in difficult things and they help people to get used to new places, to find needed support, proper support, and then when they are getting used to the country, then to stay on their mm, own and continue their life in new place. Communities need to support everyone who comes. Children need to play together. This is the best thing. They will become friends for life, believe me. And uh, peaceful coexistence starts with simple actions from each of us. We need to treat everyone with respect, to have a dialogue with everyone we meet, to have non-violence as a first standard for everyone in our family, in our school, in our city. And if you do it, on a daily basis, then we will have much better society in generally. Because we need to remember that peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is a place where we have justice, respect, and people feel belonging to the community where they live. Then they will try to keep it and to engage it even more and to embrace everyone around. So if everyone starts from his own family and himself, then we definitely can build better communities for everyone. And it will include the refugees and displaced people. And in this case, it will feel much safer. People will feel valued and heard. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Miss Anna, for your insights on how peaceful coexistence, isn't about passive tolerance. It's more about an active daily commitment to building bridges across differences. And yes, you have done, you have explained it very clearly to us that how we can do that with practical examples. Uh, so before moving forward, we have two questions that have been shared through the chat box, and I would want that you can share your insights on them right now before we move forward. So, Ms. Anna, one question is that how can we reduce misunderstandings caused by language and cultural differences?
So first of all, misunderstandings come from, let's say, wrong translations. And nowadays we have plenty of different options how we can translate properly what we want to say in different ways. We have number of technologies where you can translate the words which you want to say. There are, if you live in a big city, there are non-profit organizations who have translators who can help. If we talk about top level like state organizations, usually when you come to places where they engage with refugees, they need to provide a translator. And I have seen it in Greece when a lot of Ukrainians came. They needed to receive the permission for staying in Greece. And it was a lot of people, big volume. So one specific organization was working on giving these permissions, and they had their translators hired by state who were explaining to Ukrainians in Ukrainian what they're gonna do, what they need to do, what they need to sign, what they are signing, so they could explain everything. So there were no questions, from anybody's side, what's going on, and if there are any frauds or whatever. So if we talk about governments, we need to try to make the best from their end so they have translators for people to understand. If we talk about schools, it depends. If you have a friend who can translate, take a friend with you. If you don't have a friend, have a device who could translate whatever you want. If you are talking on a family meeting, for example, again, either use a device or trying to explain it in a different way. Sometimes we say something and people don't understand us. So try to explain the same thing in a different way from other perspective. So people will understand what you mean. We see often people think one thing and say a different one. So explaining in a different way will help much better to understand. And the other thing, if you, for example, interact with people from different culture and you don't know anything about them or very little, so it's up to you, to read a little bit, to become curious and to see, for example, I am Christian and we have a lot of Muslims coming to our country and they have absolutely different behavior, through the day, either due to their religious beliefs or to some other, conditions they have in their country. So first of all, what I do, I just read about this country, what are the usual, behavior of these people in their natural environment, what are their uh, holidays, for example, for what they do, what they eat, when they pray, whatever, what is available in general public. And then when you talk to them, you can understand, much better their point of view and their opinion and why they think the way they think. Because you grow up in one environment and these people grow in a different one. So for them, something is natural, and for you, it's very different and strange and unfamiliar. And you say like, So knowing better the culture of others and trying to support them in a different way will definitely bring much closer the understanding when you discuss something.
Thank you so much, Miss Anna. There is another question, and then we'll move towards our second speaker. And this question asks that you said that dialogue is, listening with curiosity. So, how can we train ourselves to stay curious instead of becoming defensive?
I would say you can use a tactic of asking more questions. Like when somebody says something to you and you hear it and you don't understand it very well, or you don't understand it at all, you don't understand the point of view of other people. So you can tell them, tell me more about this. And people will happily explain you more about what they are talking about because they know what they mean, what they want, and what they, expect you to understand. Asking this question, tell me more about it, or could you explain it a bit more, will give you the opportunity to understand better what they are talking about. They will see that you are curious and involved in what they are trying to tell you or to ask you, and they will feel heard, which is very important because they will understand that you are not just listening and if you don't understand, never mind, that you are trying really to understand what they say. And in case they're asking for help, it shows that you are trying to understand in order to help. So this is where the dialogue comes, because if somebody comes and says, "Hello, I need this," you need to see, what you need to do in order to help this person, how to support this person, and what exactly this person needs. Because sometimes, they come with one question, and finally you realize that they need completely different thing. So simple question, tell me more, or explain me more, will show that you are more curious and you want to understand, and this is real dialogue and not just one-way information going.
Yes, thank you so much, Miss Anna, for your insights. There are a lot of questions being shared in the chat box, and once we are done with the speakers' conversations, we'll ask you more towards the end. Thank you, Miss Anna.
All
Thank you, Miss
right,
Anna.
thank you.
Yeah. So now let's moving to on in this panel discussion. Our second speaker is Mr. Andrew Munganga, and he's a founder and executive director of Impact Center for Policy Research, a Zambian think tank advancing sustainable development through research and education. So Mr. Andrew has led multiple transformative initiatives, including Empower Her and policy reform projects in Zambia, and he also contributes research on critical African developmental issues. So, so today, in alignment with World Day of Social Justice observed on February 20th, Mr. Andrew will demystify a term we often hear but may struggle to define clearly. That is social justice. So, what does social justice actually mean in our daily lives? Mr. Andrew will break this down by using real tangible examples, fair opportunities for employment, decent working conditions, meaningful inclusion in decision making, and equitable access to resources such as education, healthcare, and economic opportunities. But he won't just stop at the definition, he'll show us the direct connection between the inequality and instability, illustrating how, when communities lack fair access and opportunities, the very foundation of the peace begins to erode. So, now drawing from his work across Zambia and his deep understanding for policy impact at grassroots level, Mr. Andrew will bring social justice from the abstract to our neighborhoods, workplaces, and local institutions. He'll help us see that social justice isn't a distant ideal. It's more about whether a young woman in rural community can access the same opportunities as her urban counterpart, whether workers have safe conditions and fair wages, and whether marginalized voices are heard in the decisions that affect their lives. So, Mr. Andrew, we are very eager to hear your insights. The floor is all yours.
All right, thank you so much. Good evening, morning, good afternoon from wherever you're joining us from. I am so glad to be here. Thank you so much to the Women Ascension for this opportunity. It's an honor to speak on this day on a topic that is very cardinal and timely, actually. So social justice, equity, and fairness is one important topic that I'm going to be speaking. And I would love you to ask your questions and maybe share in the chat box if you have any other contribution. So thanks again to Women Ascension, Dr. Mahin and the team for this opportunity. It's always wonderful to speak on such platforms. So social justice, you might be wondering, what is social justice? This has actually many definitions. You can go on Google and check in different dictionaries, and you find that it has actually different definitions. So on the screen, I have two definitions. One being fairness in how people live, work, and are treated. Okay, fairness and how people live, work, and are treated. And according to Nancy Frazier, she says social justice has three parts. The first being fair economic resources, which is redistribution. and then recognition being respect for different identities, then representation, meaning everyone has a voice in decision making. So I'm going to break this down so you could just, I have a few minutes, but I'll be a bit quick just to give a little bit of some examples. And so according to Nancy, when she says social justice being in three parts, the first being redistribution, meaning fair economic resources, it means that each and every one in society, in communities, has the right to receive or to have fair economic resources, no matter wherever or which community you're actually coming from. Economic resources must be shared equitably amongst, people in society or in communities where we're coming from. And then when we talk about recognition, it means that there is an aspect of respect for different identities. If you're a Christian, you're a Muslim, you are a Hindu, respect is very cardinal because of my identity. So the aspect of recognizing people from whatever culture they are coming from and all those kind of things, respect is very cardinal. And then the representation here is where everyone has a voice in decision making, no matter their age, their gender, everyone has the right to voice out. And this aspect then entails that they also have a responsibility to make a decision. So if you want to read more about this, you can read the book of The Scales of Justice, Reimagining Political Space in a Globalizing World by Nancy Fraser. So you might be wondering again, your daily routine actually does matter. So what is social justice in your daily life? How do you look at your neighbor? How do you look at everyone that is actually surrounding you? So first, to begin with, is the aspect of decent work. Social justice in our daily life encompasses the aspect of decent work. Now, work should be safe, respectful, and fairly paid. This is one important thing that every one of us should know. Decent work is productive work that delivers a fair income. Okay? For example, you have a certain qualification and you need to work in a particular organization or institution, or you're working for the government, there should be a fair income, okay, that is supposed to be given to you. By virtue of you having certain qualifications, you need to be given a fair income. Rights, social protection, and supports sustainable economic growth. So, mind you, decent work is the foundation of social justice. It is the foundation of social justice. So it is a source of dignity and the foundation of peace, as well as social justice, greater equality, and is at the heart of the UN's 2030 agenda. So you can also find out more from ILO on how decent work actually promotes social justice. So everyone, as long as you are a worker, you are not supposed to be exposed to, labor whereby you are working in a particular company and then you are exposed to, for example, I want to use this word, but I hope it's appropriate in this matter. For example, you are exposed to sexual abuse if you are a lady, okay? Meaning you are not working in a decent environment, by the way. You are working in an environment that is so uncomfortable for you. So the other aspect is inclusion. Now, no one should feel they are left behind because of disability or because of their gender, because of their tribe, religion, or in fact, economic status. By virtue of you being a human being, you are entitled to what everyone else is entitled to. So I'll give you a very good example. The Zambian Constitution or amendment recently, I think last year, introduced a mixed member proportional representation with 20 reserved seats for parliament, in parliament for women and the youth. Meaning, we no longer see an aspect of where only men are the ones that are only supposed to be in parliament. We also see a representation of women. We also see a representation of the youth. And that is what we want to see in the world nowadays. And this should not just be in Zambia, it should be everywhere. This bill was actually passed and it was assented by the president. And we are only having a few months before we head to our election. We'll see how this actually goes. But then this aspect of having women and youth being represented in parliament, it's a goal. It's what we want to see as we are heading towards, as a daily life. This should be what should be happening. Okay. So apart from inclusion, we also have fair access to resources. So this is a daily life that we need to see, fair access to resources. In this case, no one should feel left out of disability, okay? Gender, tribe, religion, or economic status. It's still the same thing. Fair access to resources. Everyone must have access to resources. It doesn't matter wherever they are coming from. In Zambia, we have this conflict, and I'm hoping that the government of Zambia does not put a blind eye on this, because if they do, then we are going to head into a conflict. There is a place known as Western Province, as a province, Western Province, and these people have been crying for fair access to resources, okay? They feel they are quite neglected in terms of development. And it's really an issue right now, even if I know it's being handled at that level, but I think that it should be a thing that the government should put as priority: fair access to resources. In simplest terms, it ensures equitable, just distribution of essential elements such as water, clean water, food, shelter, education, and healthcare. Very important to all individuals. Think about a garden, okay? Think about a garden, let's say a community garden, where every one of the members of the community should actually benefit. So it can't just be open to a select few. It should be open to everyone. Everyone who does not have vegetables at their homes can come and just get from the community garden. Why? Because it's a community garden. Everyone has or must have access to the vegetables. That's a very practical example that I can actually give in this case. So it has to be set up in a way that allows anyone in the neighborhood to benefit from the vegetables and the fruits that are grown there. So if you are in a country, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Afghanistan, Ukraine, you should have access to these resources. Very important. Why? This is for your own economic growth. It's for your own social and cultural development. Daily life, we are still talking about how should we live in our daily life when we talk about social justice. Why? But before that, I would love to just give practical examples. In an absence of equality, what happens? Why inequality affects peace and stability. This is one thing that you need to know. And I'll be very frank and being able to give practical examples. So the first thing is that youth without opportunities may feel hopeless and disconnected from society. And this is where we see a very good example is Nigeria, the Boko Haram. Why did that arise? Why did they feel it is our time? We need to take over the schools. We need to take over the natural resources, the mines, and all those kind of things. It is because of the promise, and someone somewhere broke the promise. And what happened? They decided to cause conflict. And to them, they felt that is inequality. We are not being considered. We are being left behind. And what happens? They started, bringing in the aspect of conflict, war, and all those kind of things. Not only that example, a lot of examples. In the DRC, we see a lot of young people now, fighting for minerals and all those kind of things. It is because they feel they are left behind. Now, that is an issue that our governments, civil society organization, different stakeholders should actually look at in order for us to enjoy our rights and justice for all. Now, the other aspect is communities competing over scarce resources may develop into conflict. I just gave an example of the DRC. We've seen how fights have been happening in the North Kivu of the DRC. I did a research about that, and I think the time I was doing my fellowship with the women Ascension, that was one of the research that I was conducting of why is there continuous conflict in the North Kivu. It is because of people are competing over scarcity resources. They want to be connected. They want to have resources and all those kind of things. And if you in one way or the other, if you are not bringing in the aspect of equality in terms of minerals and all those kind of things, you see conflict. Another example I would give is in Zambia. There were some recent issues to do with the small scale miners and illegal mining and all those kind of things. Now, the local people themselves are feeling like, look, we see a lot of people coming from the Western, the Eastern, and all those kind of things coming into our community, getting these resources away from us. What about us? Now, I like the initiative that the government has currently brought in to say, oh, look, we are ready to give you certificates. The only thing that we want you to do is go and get yourself this particular skill and come and get this certificate. It's as easy as that. Of course, that comes with a condition, but there's an aspect of inclusion because you are giving them, say, okay, look, we just need you to earn a particular certificate, and then we're going, earn a particular skill, and we'll give you this certificate. Now, that's how the government of Zambia has decided to do these things. So without including youth, women, and other members of the community, we'll see people competing over scarce resources, which may develop conflict. The other aspect is when only a few benefit from development projects, trust in leadership is declined. If you have a select few, benefiting from development projects, then you see that people will begin to lose trust. Now, that is an aspect of social injustice. If you just want to have a few people only enjoying, certain developmental projects, like maybe you're trying to build, or you're trying to build a borehole, and then you do not want to do the same thing in the other community and all those kind of things, meaning that your trust, the trust that people have for you, the trust that the community has for you will actually decline. So to avoid people having their trust decline on you, you need to have everyone benefit from the development projects. Now, as a result of everything, we'll see that everyone in society will be happy. I will be happy. You will be happy. Everyone will be happy. Why? Because you have given them equal opportunities to become who they want to be. You have given them equal, or you have distributed equal resources to their communities. You have given them access to health services. You've given them access to shelter, food, and all those kind of things. And that's what we want to be. And that is what we want to see in our world. So if there are any questions, this is the time. Thank you very much for your attention. This is only these were a few things that I actually had for every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Andy, for grounding social justice in such concrete and accessible terms. Your emphasis on fair opportunities, decent work, and equitable access reminds us that justice isn't abstract. It's measured whether our neighbors can feed their families, whether our colleagues are treated with dignity, or whether our communities create pathways for everyone to contribute and thrive. So there are a lot of questions in the chat box that are being shared, but we'll take them towards the end for you, Mr. Andrew. So meanwhile, let's move on towards our next speaker, who is Miss Petrina Montrose. She is a criminal justice mentor. She is a social justice advocate and a survivor who has transformed her life, her lived experiences into a powerful advocacy for systematic change. So she serves as an expert on the Experience Review Panel for Modern Slavery and Human Rights Policy and Evidence Center. She's providing critical survivor insights into policy development and practices with UN Women UK, integrating her expertise in forensic psychology with advocacy for gender equality. Now, today, in alignment with Zero Discrimination Day, observed on March 1st, and the International Day for the Right to Truth concerning gross human rights violation and for the dignity of victims, observed on March 24th, Ms. Petrina will address two interconnected pillars of just societies, anti-discrimination and then the accountability part. So she will explore why anti-discrimination policies and inclusive practices matter, not just as bureaucratic checkboxes, but as fundamental protections that safeguard human dignity. Ms. Petrina will discuss the right to truth for victims of justice, why acknowledgement of harm isn't optional, and why truth-telling is central to healing and how justice systems must prioritize dignity alongside accountability. Now, drawing from her work at the intersection of criminal justice, policy reform, and survivor advocacy, Ms. Petrina will help us understand that true accountability goes beyond punishment. It requires systems that listen to those who have been harmed, policies informed by lived experiences rather than assumptions, and a commitment to preventing future violations. She'll show us that when we deny discrimination or silence victims' truth, we don't just fail the individuals, we fracture the social contract that holds communities together. So Ms. Petrina's mission to reform anti-trafficking policies and champion social justice reminds us that sustainable change requires both compassion and courage. So Ms. Petrina, we are really grateful for your voice today. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for Women Ascension for giving me this opportunity to speak to you all today. Hello to everybody. Can you see my screen? Am I
Yes.
presenting? Okay, my technical skills aren't the best. How is that? Is that okay? Let me just see if I can.
Perfectly fine.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon here from the UK. It's an honor to be here today. I'm going to be discussing with you anti-discrimination, dignity and accountability, and Zero Discrimination Day, which is on the 1st of March. It's the International Day for the Right to the Truth for Victims, and that's on the 24th of March. So I wanted to start by discussing what dignity actually constitutes. It's a foundational principle of human rights, and it's stated by the United Nations, the Special Rapporteur. It embodies the intrinsic right of every individual to be valued and respected, regardless of social status, race, gender, or achievements, simply by the virtue of being human. Now, the foundation of human rights by the international framework in the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights enshrines human dignity as the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Now, there's a definition of dignity by a particular activist that I really like, called Malali, and she says that I speak not for myself, but for those without a voice, their right to be treated with dignity. So, for me, in my lived experience, that's being stolen by the very discrimination that silences victims. So, as you may or may not know, I am a survivor of sex trafficking as a minor, and my virginity was sold for the exploitation of prostitution. Now, sex trafficking deeply wounds human dignity, and it's the objectification, the eroding of self-worth through dehumanization and desensitization to the suffering of vulnerable and the marginalized. Now, from a human rights and ethical standpoint, every person's dignity has an inherent worth that must be respected, while a person's fundamental dignity, we can argue, can never be stripped from us. But the experience of feeling dignified can. And I would say that my experience was that it's a violating experience being sexually exploited, because not only does it take our sense of dignity, it silences us. It silences victims, and it ruptures and creates a pervasive sense of mistrust and lack of security. And our humanity as victims, it's no longer bound to yours. Yeah. So we are no longer human together. A child's innocence is sacred, and it's something we are all born with, regardless of our circumstances. And this is why sex trafficking is considered a scourge upon humanity. The legal recognition, for example, the courts use the principle of dignity to justify broader protections for victims and to hold traffickers accountable for crimes against humanity. Now, when we deny our inherent worth in the absence of dignity, we discriminate based on specific and often protected characteristics. So, in legal frameworks such as the UK, the Equality Act of 2010, there are 9 specific characteristics that are referred to, as I just mentioned, protected characteristics, and they relate to an aspect of an individual's identity that should be protected against discrimination. Now, the concept is fundamental, and it's the heart of our advocacy efforts to combat racism and discrimination, advocating for fairness and equality in every aspect of life, whether in employment, education, or access to public services. Zero discrimination aims to eliminate barriers associated with protected characteristics, traits legally protected from biased treatment. And the categories are, we have these inherent traits. So we have age, disability, race, including ethnicity and nationality, sex and sexual orientation. We have social legal status, marriage, civil partnership, pregnancy, maternity, religion beliefs, and gender reassignment. And the UN has expanded the UN status to HIV and health status, and we have socioeconomic status, migration status, and other statuses per the Pomaro, I never can say that correctly, protocol in the UN human rights standards. So the definitions in the context of dignity is it's often through the lens of harassment, which is defined as an unwanted conduct that violates a person's dignity or creates a hostile or humiliating environment. So we can have direct discrimination, treating someone less favorably because of protected characteristics, or we have indirect discrimination, policies that apply to everyone but disadvantage a specific group. Now, in research and policy, the Zero Discrimination Initiative underscores the urgent need for decriminalization and structural reform. It highlights that punitive laws, such as those criminalizing LGBTQ plus identities or prostitution, along with social stigma, create systemic barriers that prevent access to justice, healthcare, and education, thus sustaining inequality and injustice. So, truth-telling. So this is something that I think is a very powerful tool that's really underutilized in our advocacy efforts, is the power of speaking our truth. So the rights to truth and the mandate of justice are to perform, I would argue, a sacred duty. It's the restoration of a person's status as a human being. Now, in the wake of crimes as profound as sex trafficking and systemic discrimination, the truth is not merely a collection of facts. It is the first act, I would argue, of liberation. So it's the foundation of all dignity is our truth. Now, for a survivor whose innocence has been defiled, this broken world, as the perception that I've had for decades of it, of living in the margins, of taking 16 years to re-educate myself, the arduous journey of reclaiming a sense of self outside of a status of marginalization, in my case, trafficked into prostitution, where I stayed for a long time, it's held together by exploiters and it's held together by exploitation. So when we're upholding the rights to truth, it means that we're shattering the silence, and traffickers use this as a cage. It's a form of trauma bonding, and it imprisons victims and survivors. Now, validation, when we speak the truth, it is to affirm that what happened was real, that it was something, it was a crime, and that the victim bears no shame. I've conducted research on victim blame, and there is an endemic myths and so many stereotypical notions we have of what legitimizes a victim, what our perceived notion is of what a legitimate victim looks like. And we need to break those. We need to break those stereotypes and the biases. And also, when we look at it from historically, society has a collective duty. We all actually have a collective duty to document these atrocities so that the commodification of people, us, your family, whoever it is that shares this life with you, it's never erased from our moral ledger. Now, what I mean by that is that there's lots of things, but one thing is we don't need to be bystanders. We don't need to be complicit. We can all the time speak up. It can make such a difference because justice is a living process, as our last speaker, Andrew, said. It's justice is not a static verdict. It is a commitment to active restoration. And it requires us to move beyond the courtroom and into the structures of our very fabric of our society. Now, the end of impunity. Well, justice demands that we pursue the buyers and the people that buy sex, the demand, with the same vigor with which we protect the vulnerable. And it means that we ensure that no person is ever for sale. But I want to reiterate that we have substantive rights. Upholding justice means ensuring that survivors are more than just a day in court. They must have a path to a life of unconditional dignity, including housing, healthcare, and the right to be seen as more than their trauma. Now, so obviously, currently we have a lot of methodological gaps, such as one is the intersectional gap. And intersectionality is very interesting, and it's an analytical framework, and it was coined actually by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989, so I may not have my dates quite right, but it was how social political identities such as gender, class, and sexuality overlap to create unique compounded experiences of discrimination or privilege, and it intersects in systems of power, and it produces pervasive inequalities rather than analyzing factors in isolation. So, for example, we may not take into consideration the context of the person's life. We decontextualize, we don't take into consider other pre-existing vulnerabilities. For example, there is a lack of, to date, there is a lack of evidence, as I mentioned, on intersectional approaches in policy design and analysis, but they fail to address the overlapping effects, as I've said, in gender, religion, sexual orientation, and disability. But there is also a lack of evidence regarding the numerous heterogeneous policy interventions that are constantly being developed. We have so many policies, but studies are mainly conducted in the Western countries, particularly the US, despite the expanding and diversifying literature, and geographically, we have a lot in the academia, but there is a sense of urgency for evaluations of anti-discrimination policies that go beyond short-term individual outcomes. We need to emphasize the need for longitudinal assessments that measure cultural and structural changes within institutions. For example, they study a single type of policy or intervention, such as training courses or leadership programs, but they cater only to one population or one category, such as, for example, this is not exclusive, for students. And the exceptions include the evaluation of gender equality policies there are so many policies and programs about gender inequality and sexual violence or sexual violence educational programs. And there's very little on other areas. So, for example, there's evidence to suggest that the significance of these policies for anti-discrimination lies not in their mere existence, but in their operationalization. So I'm going to go on, and God willing, I will be a forensic psychologist, but I want to study this. I want to go and really continue my research and further develop it from a survivor leader perspective in how how policies can reduce individual bias. I mean, the research to date shows that these particular policies are less effective than those fundamentally that reform institutional procedures to promote procedural justice. And that's an area that I'm particularly very interested in, is procedural justice. So I don't want to talk too long, but there's so much to say. But there's examples I wanted to give you of what I thought were inclusive practices. And obviously, as a survivor, policies, we need a survivor informed approach. I've spoken a lot about this with Women in Ascension, and we need policies and interventions that are designed and implemented and evaluated, may I say, with heartfelt leadership, compassionate leadership, integral leadership, authentic leadership. Kindness is not a weakness, it's a gift. And it's one that we all need to cultivate. As sentient beings, we can always hold a safe space. And we need their expertise. We need survivors' expertise. We need meaningful input from a diverse community of survivors that generally reflect their needs, their interests, and their perceptions. We need a trauma-informed approach. We need that recognizes signs of trauma in individuals and the professionals who help them and respond by integrating knowledge about trauma into policy procedures, practices, and settings, and by seeking actively to resist re-traumatization. There is a need for cultural and linguistic competence policies that involve behavioral attitudes and policies that support effective cross-cultural work. Now, I don't want you to think that I'm just focusing consistently on the negative. I know there are a lot of policies in place, but we still have huge gaps. And one thing that I wanted to leave with before I let go is examples of inclusive practice. So we can have debiased recruitment. So we can transition from the conventional CV, so screening, to the utilization of more about work sample assessments. So we can look at the way that we can be more evaluative of a person's productivity at work, how they are with work, moving away from very structured interviews to sort of mitigate against the bias and sort of prioritize objective performance. We can also encourage people to have more reflexive practices. So what I mean by that is, we all know that we are biased and we are inherently prejudicial in our thinking. We have been conditioned to think this way. A lot of it comes from social media and the influences. But if we know we are biased, we can look to be more introspective and ask ourselves what those biases are. And we can preempt them when we come into a space with a vulnerable person and put them aside so that we are there as an equal and open and sharing a safe space. Sponsorships and mentorships, establishing formal programs that go beyond passive advice, actively sponsor a survivor or a person that is vulnerable, advocate for the promotions of underrepresented and marginalized employees into key leadership positions. Do you even know if there is a very vulnerable person amongst you? All of these things are things that we can think about. So there are an estimated 5.1 billion people, around 2/3 of our global population, lack meaningful access to justice and are excluded from the benefits of the rule of law. So this justice gap exclusion sustains inequality. It keeps people in poverty and it blocks access to service and protections. We have an urgent call, my dear friends, to action, and it's necessary to achieve this developmental goal, which is the 16.3, which advocates for equal justice for all. So research focusing on people-centered systems indicate that according to this 2019 global data, justice systems are failing the majority of the world's population. So we need institutional trust. If there even is such a thing, it's vital for an effective justice system from a survivor's perspective to recognize past failures, such as those revealed in the Epstein files. Failing to do so, if we don't do this, if we don't believe survivors, if we keep silencing us, and that, by the way, doesn't mean that we're tokenistic. It doesn't mean that I share all of my sexual exploitation, what happened to me. That is not ethical survivor inclusion. I'm talking about ethical survivor leadership, which I can't to discuss because I'll be talking forever. But if we don't look at trying to, if we fail, we erode legitimacy. We're causing marginalized groups to withdraw their cooperation, and we're undermining the system's integrity, and we're preventing perpetrators from being held accountable. So epistemic justice recognizes harm to survivors and victims. It restores epistemic agency. It validates lived experience as objective truth, challenging the epistemic injustices inherent in silencing. Thank you for listening. I hope I haven't talked too much, and thank you all for having me and listening. And thank you very much. Hello.
That was perfect. Miss Petrina. It is never too much to listen to you. So thank you so much, for that courageous and it was an essential testimony. So your insights have reminded us that accountability and truth telling aren't merely procedural. They are healing mechanisms, and they are the foundations for the trust, and they are the non-negotiable requirements for any society, any community, that claims to value justice. So thank you so much for that.
You're so welcome.
Thank you. So now that we have, we heard everyone, we heard three profound perspectives today. Ms. Anna showed us how peaceful coexistence is built through daily acts of inclusion and, bridge building in our diverse communities. Mr. Andy illuminated the, practical meaning of social justice and how inequality directly threatens peace and stability. And Ms. Petrina challenged us to embrace accountability truth telling, and dignity as essential components of healing and reform. So now it's time to hear from you guys, our participants. This is your opportunity to engage either directly with our panelists, or you can write your questions in the chat box so that we can deepen this discussion and seek clarification. So, to share your perspective and experiences with our panelists today. So, there have been some questions that have already been shared in the chat box, which are subjected to each of the speakers. So, I'll start with Miss Anna first. And Masana, I'm sure you already talked about this perspective in your presentation, but here I would like to reiterate it with this question: that how can schools promote multicultural understanding?
It depends on the country. I will explain what I mean. For example, in Greece, we have a lesson of religion, and it starts in primary school and it ends when you finish the high school. So practically, kids for 10 years learn about Orthodoxy. And this could be a very good subject where they could learn about other religions, about other traditions, about different stories of different countries, and this would promote this multicultural religion side, very easily, equally, and to everyone. Because what happens now, because Greece is an Orthodox country, for this lesson, all the kids who are Orthodox, they come and stay at the lesson. The kids who are not Orthodox from other countries, from other religions, they either stay in the class but doing whatever they want, like they are drawing or reading something else, or they are allowed not to come to this lesson at all. So I believe this is wasted time for these kids. And this could be a great opportunity, to include religions of other countries beautifully in the school curriculum, because already the lesson of religion is included there. In some other countries, they don't have such lessons. So, kind of lesson which would teach about religions of different countries would definitely help to easily involve all kids, to explain in a simple way the differences and what each religion brings, and what each culture brings together with the religion, because religion brings with it a lot of other things. It's not just the belief in God. It's traditions, it's holidays, it's what people respect and what they observe and how they wear their clothing. So this would promote easily and fast, multicultural understanding. And if the kid understands this difference, when this person become adult, this person will see the world in a completely different way and definitely will be, much more tolerating, much more empathetic, understanding, and it will help to have peace, around many nations, many countries, and people to understand each other much better.
True, very true. There is another question that is asking that why are listening sessions important at community level?
Why listening sessions are important at community level? Practically, it depends on the community, I would say. Any listening session would be good for understanding of people and understanding especially people who come from other places. Because I can give you an example of myself. In 2004, we had Olympic Games in Greece. And because the country from where Olympic Games started, it was huge feast here, and they had involved a lot of people from different countries, and they had plenty of volunteers. It was first time in the history when they said to simple people, "Do you want to volunteer? Come and just register." So of course, I went to volunteer, and I was working in language services as a translator, observer, translator for. Awarding the medals for press conferences and for doping control and different stuff. But in order to get this approval, we first go to a huge center where all the people who got these permissions should go through. And I met there a gentleman from India He was very slim and actually poor looking man, you know, and I even felt a little bit pity inside. But he was very kind and we had this nice small talk together discussing. And after a discussion, I learned that this gentleman was a trainer of national team of Greece for cricket. They invited him from India to come and to teach people how to play cricket because when you a country which holds the Olympic Games, you need to have the team for every kind of Olympic sports which is involved. And because Greece doesn't have cricket team, they had to introduce typically a Greek team for cricket. So this was like kind of bell for me that I should not judge on appearance and I always considered myself very empathetic person. And at that point, I said, you see, you always need to talk to people. You always need to understand who is the person next to you, what is the story of this person, what he does or she does in their life. And you always need to be respectful. I wasn't respectful, but even the thought, you know, to judge on appearance without a talk completely reversed, you know, after I spoke to this person. So when we see people in our communities, we see new people. What is a simple thing? Usually we take children to school and we have parents. Invite parents, you know, for a coffee or for a walk or for a meeting in the park and start to talk with them and discuss, you know, what they did in their country, what they plan to do, what they do, what languages they speak, what are the, you know, interest of these people, and you can meet incredible people, incredible. It's just you know, beginning of starting a dialogue with the person who is next to you. And as adults we are always, you know, not always but very often shy to start talking to other people, and this is actually bad. We need to be like more empathetic and, you know, gently invite people to a discussion and then just listen carefully to what they say and ask questions which they would love to answer. So you will meet a lot of very good people and possibly, you know, make great friends for life. And even if they move to other country later on, you will still be in the contact with these people. But generally, discussion brings, you know, a lot of things to each of us to understand, you know, with whom you have this discussion, and it can transform your world, you know, when you discuss with people. And it's very important to talk.
Yeah, definitely. It is very important. It is very important, yes. Uh, there's last question from you, Miss Anna, that it asks that how does understanding become the foundation of peace?
The understanding will bring the acceptance. If we understand why people do some things, uh, we will realize that, you know, something maybe it's a part of their culture and they need what they do at the same level as we need something we do for us. And if we have a clear understanding, you know, of people who live next to us, it will automatically bring, you know, more calm surroundings, more peaceful living together in a community and in a country. Because, for example, in Christianity, we have these Easter days and we have some other Christian big holidays like Christmas, you know, we celebrate it. But for example, Muslims have Ramadan, some other countries have their own, you know, religious holidays, and they, for example, don't come to work at that place or they behave in a certain way. If we understand what they do and why they do it, we will respect it, like, you know, Jewish holidays. We have a lot of Jews in every country, so they have some holidays which they respect and observe. So if we have deep understanding and we understand the cultural background of these people, so we know why they, for example, don't come to work today because it's a holiday, they don't need to work at this day. I don't get angry and I don't get nervous because I know the reason, and the reason is, you know, specific and important for this person. So I just give a day off and we continue nicely and smoothly working together. So understanding of cultures is definitely step one for peaceful surrounding, for peaceful communities, workplaces, and good relationships.
Yes. Um, Thank you so much, Ms. Anna. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I think there are a lot of questions for Mr. Andrew as well. And for that, Mr. Andrew, somebody asked that how do we ensure that social injustice initiatives are not symbolic, but lead to measurable and long-term change? Is Mr. Andy here with us?
All right, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a very, sorry, I'm unable to switch on my camera.
No worries.
That's a very important question, I would say, because at the end of the day, we should be able to measure, and not just the initiatives being symbolic. So one of the ways that we could obviously set clear and measurable targets, or how then do we measure this? We need to increase, maybe, for example, women-owned businesses registrations from a certain particular percentage, for example, from 20% to maybe 40% within 2 years. So that will make it easy for us to measure, to say, all right, we've had a particular number of women register for these businesses, and then we have a number. They say numbers don't lie. So if we have registrations from 20% to 35% within 2 years, that's quite a measurable outcome, I'll say. I think we can also use I'm trying to look for another example that I can give in terms of measuring. Maybe also we probably in a way realize that a particular number of women do not own property or do not own land on title deeds. And so a way on how this can be done is by offering maybe training to the local council or the local authority, who in turn will have to give title deeds to women, and then we'll be able to measure to say, all right, how many women in this particular community have been able to receive or title deeds and maybe own land, and from there, I think that will not only be symbolic, but also we'll be able to measure through those particular outputs. Thank you.
Thank you so much for answering that question. There is another question subjected to you specifically, that it's been asked that how can community leaders identify and support youth who feel hopeless or disconnected?
Sorry, you can come again.
Okay. The question asks that how can community leaders identify and support youth who feel hopeless or disconnected?
Okay, that's a good question as well, because you notice there are certain communities where young people have been neglected, and some of them tend to involve themselves into criminal activities. Others intend to involve themselves in alcoholic. They become addicted to alcohol and all those kind of things. So it's kind of easy for the leaders to actually identify a set of individuals that are engaged in behaviors that in bad behavior. I would say a very good example, in Zambia we have a group of people that we call junkies. These are very young people who have opted to be in communities, attacking people and all those kind of things. So it is from there, it's very visible that the leaders will be able to identify those ones and help them, by offering them education, by offering them skills. It is like we are reinstating them back into the community for them to be very productive and begin to use their skills for production and all those kind of things. And then we'll then see justice, prevailing. I think I totally agree with the point that the first speaker mentioned that, um, you know, peace is not only the absence of conflict or war, but also an aspect of building capacity for the people that we are living with in our community, in our society. So it's very easy for actually the leaders to identify the young people and the people that are in need of help and all those kind of things. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for answering that question. There's another question that asks that what role do schools and local organizations play in reducing inequality at community level?
Yes, so schools are very important in playing that particular role. But then to be very specific, it all starts from the curriculum. How's the curriculum like? What's in the curriculum? Is what in the curriculum being able to help promote, for example, justice or peace in that particular society? What you teach a young person in school is what they will take out there in society. And so if the school curriculum is not changed at that particular level, then it's very difficult for peace to be promoted or justice to be enhanced in society, because it all starts from a foundation on which a child or the community is being led on, which is education. So the curriculum has to be changed in that aspect. And then not only that, I think we also have to ensure that the schools build up the aspect of clubs. I think we've seen quite a lot of schools having different clubs. Maybe for example, debate clubs, community engagement clubs, and different kinds of clubs that will help the students or the pupils themselves understand how a community is, what's the setup like, how are we supposed to live, in our communities. It all starts from there. So reforming the curriculum or maybe introducing, school clubs and other initiatives that will help promote peace and justice, in community. So it all starts from the schools. Then they have a very important role to actually play.
Yeah, the schools have the very key responsibility to inculcate these as values and not just as a curriculum, so that the community is actually looking towards, building a community that's providing equal opportunities to everyone. So it's really important. Yeah, it's an important work at the part of the schools in that way. So thank you so much, Mr. Andrew, for your insights on the questions. So there are a lot of questions that I need to be asked from that are subjected towards Ms. Petrina. So Ms. Petrina, the first question for you is that how do structural reforms differ from individual level interventions in promoting equality?
So, right, you just have to bear with me. I always have to write everything down. So how do structural reforms can you see me, by the way?
No, I cannot.
Okay, if you just bear with me, I have no idea why that is the case. So structural reforms. Okay, so hang on. So I beg your pardon. Can you see me now? Can you see me?
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry. Structural reforms. Okay. Um, so I mean, hmm. So structural reforms, I guess, defined as fundamental shifts in sort of like institutional frameworks. I think that's what you're talking about. I could you just, sorry, could I just have the question again? Sorry, so I can
Sure,
clear.
why not?
Because my
No
computer, I've
worries
got
at all.
my computer's a little bit freezing at times, so I'm sorry. But I can answer it what I think what you're trying to say from a perspective of a survivor. Um,
But if you want me to repeat the question, should I?
well, yeah, okay. Yes, thank you.
Okay. The question asked that how do structural reforms differ from individual level interventions in promoting equality?
Individual interventions in
Yeah,
promoting.
equality.
Well, I think if structural reforms, marginalized groups are, I don't know if I can only answer it in this way, and I really don't know if it's going to answer your question, but I think marginalized, and I'm sorry, and I apologize, it's probably something that we need to talk about because I struggle with the question, truthfully, but marginalized groups are often the objects of reform rather than the subjects. So I think changing the dynamic to what you're implying here is really, really important. But structural reforms sort of like they create I don't know that I think they can create a lot of volatility. And I think to prevent marginalized people from sort of falling into poverty, reforms must be sort of have more protections when you're looking at structural reforms. So I think interventions, individual interventions promoting inequality are much better. There's no, for me, everything should be done more, if it's the right word in this context, bespoke, because we need to cater all, well, everything that I do is taken with the idea of meeting a person's individual needs. And very often that's a dialogue, and that's what happens when we're working together, and the intervention is catered through strong, very high levels adhering to safeguarding, and we look at how we can help and support a person within a very structured framework. So I think they probably work together very well. And as for promoting equality, um, well, I just think it's about giving people equal opportunities, and it's about what we spoke about. It's enabling somebody to have a voice, and that voice is validated and heard. And equality comes with treating people just. It's about empowerment, actually. It's about enabling some. It's not about enabling. It's about creating an environment where we empower people to make decisions, where we act as a facilitator, and I think those types of interventions are the best, as long as with the structural reforms as well. I think they work together in a cohesion. Does that make sense? Sorry,
That-
I just get thrown off with the word structural reform. Oh my.
Then there is another question which is very much related to it, and it
Okay.
also uses the word reforms. So,
Okay.
and I think you have answered it already, but maybe you want to add something else. The question asks that what strategies can ensure that structural reforms benefit marginalized groups most effectively?
So sorry, could you say that again? What structures?
Yeah. What strategies can ensure
Yep. Yep.
that structural reforms benefit,
Yep.
yeah, marginalized groups most effectively?
So, mm, you know, again, for me, I would like to know what whoever kindly asks that question, what they mean by a structural reform, because I think I look at frameworks or structural reforms or frameworks in sort of like policies that are mandated or that are for marginalized communities, that just about they're not about passive recipients, but they're more about active participants in designing and implementing and monitoring programs. And I think for me, I always bring it back to safeguarding, because we must go beyond what sort of like these high level, I don't know if this makes sense, these high level statements to include this detailed sort of mandatory reporting procedures for abuse or neglect without clear, severe penalties for breaches. So does that make sense? So there is something called mandatory human rights due diligence, and these are that institutions should be legally required to assess and mitigate and report on human rights impacts of their actions, aligning with the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. So for me, it's without knowing more context to the question, I think genuine accountability for caregivers or governments or institutions, particularly when working with like marginalized populations, requires moving beyond probably structural reforms, if that makes sense. We need transparent systems. We need things that are rooted in sort of downward accountability. But there's a lack of evidence of work on the ground, as these accountability systems must, I think, prioritize sort of participatory monitoring, third-party audits, and accessible direct feedback sort of kind of loops. So I really struggle, I'm so sorry, with structural frameworks. I don't know why. I'm not very good at I think everything should be more about, I like to have a very I like to know all the context and everything, and it's difficult, I find. Yeah. Does that make sense? That's terribly
Yeah.
answered, by the way. And I
No,
absolutely,
despite that,
it really is. We need to have a conversation for me to understand a little bit more. I struggle with the structural framework,
no, but
as you can
despite
tell.
that, you have answered it very precisely and comprehensively. Yeah. I mean, yes, it makes total sense. I don't think you need to worry about it.
Okay, thank you.
So, yes. So there is, okay. It's a, I don't know, it's a long question. Okay, let's break it into parts. So
Okay.
there are three questions. Okay. For you, that one question is that how should we ensure that caregivers, governments, and societal institutions are generally responsible and accountable for this cause?
That's a brilliant question. Okay, let me have a think. I like that. That's a very good question. I always get the really thought-provoking questions. Okay, so how would I answer that? So let me have a think. Well, I think to ensure that governments are genuinely responsible to marginalized causes, accountability must be moved from discretionary, which means voluntary, to mandatory. So that means it's legally enforceable. I'll just add a bit, you may not like, but because governments are held accountable for there's three primary pillars: legal, financial, and social. So I think that, how would you like, I think there's an ombudsman, is that how you say it? They're very useful and very good. There's mandatory equality duties. It's a big question, but for me, it always comes down to how we report and how we safeguard. We have to demonstrate that we're meeting the needs of marginalized groups when we're making policy decisions. And I think there's independent watchdogs as well as ombudsman systems that that have the power to be able to investigate more fully. When a government department fails or doesn't follow its own policies or treats somebody unfairly, then we have a way of being able to document that. We need resources. So I know under international law, governments are obligated to use the maximum availability of their resources to fulfill social and economic rights. So, but the most thing I'd like to say about that failing is independent audits. So I think they should conduct performance audits. I know this is me deviating off, but I think they should, not just checking, if money was spent, but if it's actually reached if it's actually promising the outcomes that it says it does. Auditing is actually a big area that's very interesting and to look into. And social accountability, yes, social audits. Yeah, maybe a process where, we can, legally mandate social audits. There are so many things that I can think of, and I hope that's answered it. But I think, yeah, that's it's all for me. If I work with somebody and I'm concerned for their safety and their well-being, I'm always safeguarding. I'm being very open and very honest, because you have to disclose that you will breach confidentiality, and I will always do a very detailed debriefing and get other people involved to help and to support. It's not to scaremonger or to cause fear or concern. It's about looking how we can help and support from, preventing any more, abuse and neglect or whatever it is that we're looking at. So it's a big duty of call. So I'm really waffling today. That's all I've got. I'm afraid I'm scrambling. I need to think about it. But I hope
It's
that
actually,
gives you
you know
some
what
food
you
for thought.
you know what you have answered. It actually it answers the next question as well.
Oh,
So
good.
I'm going to that one, yes, and I'm going to go to the next one. And
Okay.
it asks that how should transparency, reporting, and community feedback mechanisms function to distinguish authentic commitment from surface level engagement?
Would you mind so kindly saying that again? Sorry. How should transparency? That's all I got. I'm so sorry. Right, how should I can answer this one. I feel much more confident about this one. Let's go. Sorry, I beg your pardon. May I have the question again?
Sure, why not? How should transparency, reporting,
Yeah.
and community feedback mechanisms
Yep.
function to distinguish
Yep.
authentic commitment
Yep.
from surface level engagement?
Okay. Wow. Okay.
I feel like it's a tough one.
Truthfully, it is, but I'm rising to the challenge. I'm rising to the challenge. I just have to I just have to pick my brains. Okay, so I've got a few things I can say about this actually, and some of it's related, but it's indirectly related, but it is related. So hold on with me. So distinguished between community engagement. Okay. I think transparency reporting must move beyond tracking, so what was done, to reporting on who decided what was done. Does that make sense? So we shift from the output. So yeah, I really have to be very careful how I answer this. Let me answer the second part of it because of the ethical considerations. Let me answer the bit where I think one thing we need, which is a very safe answer, is we need more disaggregated data. So that means we need to break down large data sets. So age, gender, ethnicity, and location. And we need to reveal the hidden patterns and inequalities within our data. At the moment, most of our data is aggregated, and that would make a big difference in answering this question. But I don't even know where to begin with that question. I think because aggregated data, it enables, it's averaging, so it hides and it enables a more precise understanding and targeted actions for specific populations. So it disaggregated data sort of like transforms broad statistics into more of an insight. It's more nuanced. So I think I'm going to, yeah, I think that's probably about, I really need to think about that question. I really would. I would have to give it a little bit more thought, because what I'm happy to do, actually, because I like to rise to the challenge, if you could send me that question, whoever answers me that question, I'm going to write to you my answer. I need to think. I can't just from the top of my head. There's a lot of terminology in there that I need to be clear of. And I have quite different views coming from a survivor. So I want to make sure that I'm answering it ethically and professionally. And I would probably need to, I would need to I would need to look at it. I would need to, and I'd be answering it from this implementation of a sort of like double bottom line policies, and I would be exploring structural reforms and how they are evaluated on their efficiency. But I'll be looking at things like that. So I'm so sorry, I can't answer it. I'm being truthful. I would need to, but I will answer it, and I will go away and I'll put it into the context of what we've said, and we can have a discussion on my.
We can question with you, and you can take your time and you can answer it then.
I'd be more
No
than
worries
happy
at
to
all.
do that. I've done that several times. I'm the first person to say when I need to go away and think about something. I don't have, yeah, just to be sure. But don't worry, we will continue.
It is what you are. We value this truthfulness and the honesty, the rawness that you bring to these sessions and these discussions. We truly value them a lot.
Thank
It's
you.
always very nice to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So with that, I think we have concluded almost all the questions that were being asked for all of you. And I think I should move towards the conclusion of the session. So let me thank everyone who has. Would you like to say something, Mr. Andrew?
Oh, well, I know you're closing. Sorry about that. I know you're closing, but I just wanted to clear a certain question. There was a question that was directly for me, and they were trying to find out how do we protect people that are working, in the private sector, and their labor laws, or they are not, being treated fairly by those that employed them. And so they were trying to ask how I or my organization and my team, what do we do in order for us to help protect those particular employees? And my answer would be that we work with different stakeholders, the government and the private sector. And when we realize that there is such a problem or such a situation, we tend to engage with, the government in, first of all, trying to see, are those, policies in that particular company, are they in line with the labor laws? And so when we engage that particular company in trying to see if there is an alignment with the labor laws, I think that becomes very important, because then there are aspects of checks and balances to see whether they are actually doing the right thing or not. Because if they are not checked, you'd find that there will be a lot of, employees that are not treated fairly in that particular company. So we try to engage the government and different stakeholders to push for fair, labor laws or labor regulations, I would say, as well as the enforcement of minimum wage laws and the protection of every worker at that particular company. So that's how we could handle that particular situation as an organization. Thanks Otherwise, now you can close the sessions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Andrew, for that. Thank you so much for adding more value to the question and your answer. I think the lesson is being learned by everyone here. So thank you so much for your insight. So yeah, so I would reiterate that thank you everyone who has participated in today's discussion, both our panelists and our audience members. Your questions and engagement have truly enriched this conversation immensely. So thank you for that. So to our panelists, Miss Anna, Mr. Andrew, and Miss Petrina, thank you for sharing not just your expertise, but your lived experiences and your deep commitment to building more peaceful, just, and dignified societies. You've shown us that these aren't just any abstract ideals, but daily practices that begin in our own communities, workplaces, and institutions. So to our participants joining from all around the world, thank you for your time and your thoughtful questions and your commitment to these critical issues. The work of building peaceful and just societies requires all of us. It requires dialogue that, like the one we've had today, it requires learning from diverse perspectives, and it requires translating these insights into action in our own context. So Women Ascension remains committed to creating spaces for these essential conversations, connecting global principles to local action and supporting individuals and communities in their pursuit of peace, justice, and human dignity. So we look forward to seeing you all again in future sessions, as we continue to have these vital dialogues together. So until then, may the insights shared today inspire action into our own communities. Thank you so much and take care, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.